Thank you. And just moving down the agenda, public comments, if we should have any. Sean?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess it's only Dan Smith that wasn't at the meeting last night to hear my comments. So I wanted to echo those tonight in that I think the new software will be of great value to the town. You know, I don't, although I don't really agree with approving the appropriation outside of the budget. But all in all, the software will be good for the town. I think that I encourage the Board of Finance to get involved in the process of setting up the new software with the chart of accounts. There's been many times at Board of Finance meetings over the years, not just that Board of Finance members have asked for information that our current chart of accounts could not break down to that level. So once we set up this chart of accounts, it will be set up that way for probably 40 years. So it might be, you know, I think it might be a good idea to get involved, to have input into how the chart of accounts is set up, and hopefully it will be able to answer more questions in the future that come out of this board. Thank you.
Sean, thanks for your comments. Yeah, I think that certainly the addition of the software is going to be a positive. We had a lot of discussion relative to whether or not it should be in the budget or outside the budget. But it's a one-time expenditure. So it's something that, you know, it's not carried in the budget. And I know at the town meeting last night, you were using the word rush, but we've used the software for 1.5 years with the Board of Ed. They had a very good feel about the capability and the attributes of the software, and actually it encouraged general government to integrate as well as our auditing services. So thanks for your comment, and I think it's going to be a benefit to all. Thank you. And we don't have any public comments online at this moment. So we'll move to agenda item number 3. The only correspondence that I can say I officially have had is the resignation of Ann Aiken, which she did announce at our last Board of Finance meeting. And that was official as of September 17th. So we certainly wish Ann well and have appreciated her participation over the last several years. Yeah, sure. I moved it. In fact, I moved it away because I was getting a little bit of feedback on it. And I'll talk up a little bit. So on to agenda item number 4. And I'll let Board of Selectmen take a lead here. And we can go to any one of those topics that you want, Mike.
Thank you, Dan. I don't know if anybody can, I'm not on the camera, but you can hear me. Mike Ergo, First Selectman. Thank you for having me tonight, which has been a recurring act at the Board of Finance meetings lately due to the relief funds that we received and the way we are taking those funds up. And just for those who may not be familiar, we do have the Arpa funds available to us, which were given to us from the state in the use of COVID relief. And the way we're handling those funds is that we have a plan that we've kind of put together, but we are taking up some as they come along as we have looked at our plan. And so each time there's an appropriation request, it's going through the Board of Selectmen, then through the Board of Finance. And if it's over $20,000 as required by state statute, it goes through the town meeting for an approval as well. So tonight we have a couple of requests for the Arpa funds. The first one is for some signage. So We have these double-sided mobile sign frames in town to keep the community informed about issues, votes, but COVID-19 issues, really, we use them a lot for this year. These signs, they're nice because we can actually just print the inserts at town hall. They hold up okay. I mean, because they're not super waterproof. So eventually, like after a 3 or 4 week period, they might not look as good. But generally speaking, I've liked to use those signs, not necessarily for, weeks on end, more like days. But we wanted to get a few more of these because we did have a couple that were had been ruined for a variety of issues. But so we want to get 6 of them. So that's an expenditure of $1,092.28. The second expenditure request is for Thames Valley Council for Community Action, senior nutrition of $2,000. This supports the Meals on Wheels program, and they've requested $2,000 to offset the cost of upgrades to the nutrition commissary and improve service to their most vulnerable residents. We have 4 or 5 participants in the program. We've had as many as 10 in the past, and I did go through our senior center director to make sure that we felt this was something we should support, and she also agreed that this is something that we should support. So the total request for this is $3,092.28. So that is the request that I have. And yeah, we can touch on that first if you guys have any questions, and then I can go to the next thing.
I think we can move for an approval on these. So we'll just take one at a time, and I would make a motion that we approve the request from the Board of Selectmen relative to the ARPA funds for signage in the amount of $1,092.28. Do I have a second?
A second.
What is the second on that? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Dan, I'm here, so in case you didn't notice.
I got you signed in, Mike. Thank you so much. That's Mike
Yep.
Candace. And that vote is 5-0-0 and signage passes. The next, I would move that we approve the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen relative to the ARPA funds for senior nutrition in the amount of $2,000. Do I? Dan Smith seconds that. Any further discussion necessary?
It kind of ties into this, there, with the increase from the letter that I saw that they're having. Have we noticed an increase in our own senior center usage, and have they requested any more funds for the senior center?
We haven't requested any more funds for the senior center. We already did allocate money for the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center to help with vulnerable residents, but not necessarily the senior population, though it could also be with the senior population. So we have given some funds for support in those types of areas as well already.
Okay, thank you.
Any other points of discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Again, 5-0-0. Passes with approval of the Board of Finance.
Thank you. The final item that I'm presenting tonight is a truck replacement transfer. The appropriation request is for $53,000 replacement of an F-350 truck 42. Highway Foreman Don Hill would present on this, if that's okay, Dan, but I'll just set the table before I turn it over to Donnie. Just as a reminder for those who may have not been familiar with the discussions about this, this was included in the Board of Selectmen's budget when we went through the appropriations process. We did remove it through the Board of Finance action, and that really was kind of a collaborative effort to try to say, okay, how can we try to get a budget through that we feel mitigates impact to the taxpayer. But if you remember, similar to the software, there was discussion about coming forward with appropriations that were necessary. And after some additional information has come forward on this truck, we already thought it was very necessary. That's why we included it in the budget. But now there's even more information that has come forward that makes this a more urgent request. So I don't want to steal any of Donnie's thunder, but he's got a presentation he can go to, and then you can come back to me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Did a little bit of a PowerPoint. So we're looking to replace this truck for the following reasons. The current status of the truck, it's got 200,100 miles. The frame integrity has rot issues. The front end integrity also has rot issues. Cab integrity has holes in the cab due to rot. The cab mounts and the steps going into the truck have rotted away. We've had the mechanic actually make steps for it, and I'll show you pictures of that. And the most recent thing discovered probably after I came back from my injury was the exhaust manifolds were found to have rot holes in the exhaust manifolds. In order to replace those, you got to pull the motor. So we're trying to, it's pretty much, we can't do much with it right now. And the vehicle is 15 years old, which is pretty good for a highway department with a vehicle that plowing snow and in the rot. So this is one of the cab corners that's rotted out. All along the bottom there, the steps that you see had to be welded to the frame because there's nothing underneath the truck that you can still mount anything to. One of the, again, a corner going into the cab rotted out. Another section, this is towards the front of the truck on the passenger side, that's completely rotted out. Another section where actually exhaust is coming into the truck at. Another area with us showing the steps he had to build actually to the frame in order for you to get in and out of the truck. This is where the cab mount is actually rotted away from the frame itself. And we're worried about the actual cab coming off the truck at that point. And this is the exhaust manifold. This is a big problem. It has 5 holes in it right there. I actually brought the truck with me. So you can, if anybody wants to look at it, hear it, I've got it in the parking lot. Next slide. So I went and checked out some prices on them, just called some dealers that we've done work with in the past. This is Columbia Ford. They put a total price in, including the plow package, of $47,207. Now, anybody that's tried to buy a vehicle today knows that there's going to be a long wait time on it. So Columbia Ford actually told me we were looking at January 2022, maybe even later into April, if we went with that one. This is off the state bid. Gengras is or Genegras is on the state bid for trucks. I called them up. They actually have trucks on the lot. They're green, but we don't really care about color because we need the truck to do the work. Their price off the state bid to us estimated would be delivered in 2021 October is $52,934. That's the complete package with the tow, with the plow, and everything we needed to make it what we have today. This is just showing, I believe this is, yeah, this is showing that what we've, is that the one I'm looking at? Huh? Oh, the 5-year capital plan, where there's a couple dashes in there where vehicles have been removed since 2018. So we've been asking for this truck since 2018. It either got cut before it went to the board to reduce the budget, or it got cut at the board. This is just a showing you that I keep track of maintenance on every vehicle that we have in our fleet. I have a yearly track that I do on them, and then a total track from 2018 when I took over to start tracking these vehicles, what we're spending on. And this is what we don't want to happen. We don't want the truck to look like this because it is rotted to the point where this could actually happen. If you put some weight in there, the thing could bend in half. And then time for questions, or we could go on a little field trip to the park.
If I could, just as a reminder, thank you, Donnie. As a reminder, this would go to town meeting for approval as well if the Board of Finance approves it.
Yeah, this truck is it an F-250 or
The
F-350?
current truck is, I believe it's a 350. I believe it's in the parking lot.
All right. And in the fleet, what's the responsibilities of this particular vehicle?
This vehicle is driven by the mechanic who plows the dirt roads with it. All of our dirt roads, this vehicle takes care of, as well as backup for the fire department and also for the schools, helping me out at the schools and the library and then the town hall parking lots. But I mean, we can use it anywhere. If I have somebody out that we need this truck somewhere else, we'll do it. I mean, plows Hewitt Road, you know, all the dirt roads, like I said, it takes care of, because the bigger trucks, when the dirt roads are warm, the plows will bend right over. So this truck actually has the rake on it, in which we plow the dirt roads.
All right, seeing the pictures, and I just say this as a personal comment, I'm surprised you even were able to drive it here, quite frankly.
Well, if you hear it, you'll be.
Or was it towed?
You would be embarrassed to see the town seal on the truck, to be honest with you. But I try to make things last as long as we possibly can. Unfortunately, due to the weather and the salt and everything, this truck's just has been destroyed by the salt.
Yeah, just for background information, maybe you can just tell the audience how they're housed. You know, I know we don't have facilities to house all our vehicles. So.
Correct. So this truck would stay out in the elements 24/7. It's parked outside the shop. During the winter storms, after the storms, all trucks are washed. We have a wash bay at the shop and we wash them underneath and on top too. Rinse the trucks off after the storm. So it's not like it was just parked there after the storm and left and to rot out. I mean, we did do some preventive maintenance on it to try to alleviate this problem, but again, it's 15 years old and it's been through a lot of snowstorms.
Go ahead, Brett.
Donnie, is this one, when it comes into the fleet, if it moves forward, is this one you're going to be using and then passing down?
Correct. I believe in the capital plan that the replacement of the foreman's truck was a year or two away. Somewhere in the next couple of years, we're going to be looking to replace truck one according to the capital plan. If this takes place, we won't be replacing truck one. Truck one would go to the mechanic and he would be using truck one.
Right. And I know I did watch I was at the selectmen's meeting and you talked about you were doing this to try to be frugal and save money as you were shopping. But do you think that's a detriment long-term of not going for a diesel based on mileage capacity, especially if you do use it for towing on occasion? I know with diesel, the long-term life is much better. Mileage, all those things. Do you think saving the money is worth it in the end?
As far as the diesel trucks, talking to a lot of the dealers, they say that really the diesel truck is if you're going to be pulling heavy stuff with it. If you're going to be carrying a heavy load, well, that's what we use the 550s for, the dump trucks. If we're going to haul something, we're going to haul them with that. So gas vehicles today are cheaper as far as when it comes to fuel. Paying for fuel, it's cheaper on the maintenance as far as filters and that end of it. So, you know, gas motors today last a lot longer than they used to. I have a Lincoln MKX that's got 295,000 miles on it with the original motor. So, and that's gas. So the gas motors today are a little bit better than what they used to be years ago. And by the time you get to this truck, I believe has 100 or 200,000 miles on it. By the time you get to 200,000 miles, the trucks, you know, because of the weather, we're out in it all the time with the salt. And because of that, they rot out faster than the motors go.
So the one that you're proposing from Gingras, that's pretty much everything that you need in the truck?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
How about the used truck market? I mean, I think all of us have seen the scarcity of vehicles at dealerships. I'm sure it's certainly the case for used trucks, but you know, had that been explored?
No, we haven't looked into that. A lot of times when you get into the used market, you get other people's problems. And we need a truck that it's gonna be reliable and that we can use, you know, if it's a snowstorm, jump in it and go. As far as truck 42, I don't even feel safe sending it to auction as a vehicle other than parts, because it's that bad. And if we don't do this, that truck is not going to run this winter, because driving here, I had to have the window down to get here.
Dan, I just want to make a comment on that. I was shopping for F-250s and F-350s over the past 2 months. And I can tell you the used market is the difference between the used market and the new market is slim to none in price wise. So it makes a lot more sense to buy new in this current market.
And had the lease option been explored at all relative to either one of these vehicles?
We we did not look at the lease option. We could still approve this and look at the lease option if we wanted to expend less from, but we didn't come forward with that as a proposal.
My only thought there is interest rates are still very low, and particularly based on what Brett Mastriani just said, the residual on these vehicles is high. So it actually makes potentially a lease payment.
The leases that we do, residual doesn't really come into play because they're really like a purchase. It's just on paper, it's a lease because that's how it's structured with the companies that we've dealt with. But it's not like a lease like I have on my car with a residual value at the end like that. But I think where we've gone to lease, we've tried to look at that strategically in the capital plan with where we know that we have a need. And we did try, we have looked at that like as over the years. This truck has been in the budget and it's overdue. That's why we're here tonight. So.
Dan Smith?
Does the fleet, besides having on the wash bay, do they do any other preventative maintenance on any of the frames like fluid film, wool wax, or anything like that?
Correct. We just, before October, we usually fluid film all the trucks, and we just did that 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah, obviously this one is well past that, but it seems like if the preventative maintenance on this truck was done in years prior, it probably wouldn't have gotten this bad, correct?
That's,
Prior to you taking over.
well, I mean, we could say it could, but that's not a definite because you have to understand these trucks are out 24/7 on the salt roads when we're out there doing the snow removal.
I understand,
And it just
but,
doesn't end
but,
there.
but from what I see from those pictures, those are, that's terminal. That just doesn't happen over a couple of years. That happens over many years of,
Right, we have,
so,
the truck's 15 years old.
yeah, I understand. I'm just wondering if what the preventative maintenance schedule is for these frames in our fleet right now.
I think when they mean, they'll, if we'll spray a truck down or whatever, we'll, those things we do, but you have, as Donnie was saying, like we're on the road with these things every day. So we're not washing them every day. We're not, that doesn't make any sense. That's not a good use of our time, but we
I
are.
understand.
Yeah, but it's a point well taken. And our mechanic is actually really competent. The new mechanic we have, he's doing a great job.
I don't
so.
doubt that. I'm just wondering, for my sake, how a truck 15 years old gets that bad and we're still driving it around. And was there any preventative maintenance been done on it
Yeah.
through the years?
it
Any
has-
records of it?
Prior to me, it did get a type of fluid film, but it wasn't the stuff that lasts as long as the current stuff we're using does.
Yes.
So it would last about anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 weeks.
Yeah, there's cheaper options out there, but fluid film does last a good amount of time.
Right.
Okay. I'm all set.
The first vehicle that you described with pricing at 47,000, did that have the plow package again for clarity?
Yeah, that was from Columbia Ford. That is with the plow package, but there is a weight on it.
Okay, so we're talking January as opposed to October. So,
It's what he's telling me. I mean,
Yeah.
I would
3
recommend,
months.
I would recommend if we get this approved to buy the truck we can get. I don't think we want to not have the vehicle for the winter. There's a point where we're trying to be stewards of the taxpayer, but we also have to serve the taxpayer and make sure that roads are clear and that we're taking care of the people in town. So, although we might save a couple of $1,000 if we wait, as Donnie said, we don't even know if that truck may be gotten in January. It may not be till April. So if there's a truck on the lot that serves our purpose within the budget that's approved, I would suggest that we move on that truck.
Yeah, and there's about a $5,000 difference.
Yeah.
there. And how far out did you go relative to finding a truck? I mean,
as far as how many companies that I talked to,
yeah. Mhm.
I basically just called 2 to get a basic idea. We didn't RFP it. We don't have too much luck when we RFP vehicles. Christine can attest to the fact that we only usually get one bid or maybe two bids, and one's really high and the other one's, decent. So this one that I gave you with the higher bid, the higher price is actually on the state bid. They're on the state bid list.
Go ahead, Christine.
And the difference between the two trucks is the less expensive truck is a 250 and the more expensive truck is a 350. So they are different trucks. It's not different pricing on the same vehicle.
Correct.
The truck that's being replaced, I checked Donnie's paperwork, it is a 350.
Correct.
That's an important point. Thank you. With my last comment, I mean, if this should be approved, and again, we'd have to go to a town meeting. Would you continue to shop or would you be satisfied in making the purchase?
I'm always looking to save the town money. I mean,
Okay.
if we could find something that's cheaper, because basically we need a vehicle to plow snow. I don't care what color it is. I don't care what it looks like, just as long as it can do the job and be safer than what we have right now, then that's what we go with.
Brett, you have a question?
Yeah, it goes along with what you stated. If this does move forward, it would be nice for you to keep looking in this process, because if the maximum, if it's approved, then that's up to, we're not basing it on this one truck. We're just basing the dollar value, correct? Because my point would be, it would be nice if we could find one with what you need in white, so our fleet looks the same. So we don't have green like Stonington. So we keep everything.
Well, actually, the
Same.
trucks that we have, the big trucks are green.
Oh, the big ones, yeah. But the
And
town
again,
truck.
color doesn't matter. We just want to get this thing so we can use it.
I agree with
Thanks.
you, Brett. I would rather see a white truck as well to match the rest of the fleet.
Yeah.
It's one.
Exactly.
And between the two trucks, I mean, I certainly, with knowledge I have, would prefer the 350 over the 250. Any further points? Any from Sarah or Mike? All right. I think based on the condition of our current truck and the criticality of its usage, I would move that we approve the appropriation request from the Board of Selectmen for the additional truck for the Highway Department fleet at 53,000. Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Just in the future, it would be helpful at budget time to see like pictures like that. So then when stuff comes out of the budget like that, the decisions are easier to go along with and say, hey, and that way we can fight for it more in the budget, saying, look, this is a necessity. We really need this, compared to going this route. I just don't like going for the appropriations this way, but it's definitely something that needs to be done. It just, if we can see those kind of pictures at budget time, I think that would help.
I thought I did. give
So
pictures.
we have a very thoughtful process about capital expenditures, and we've gone so far as to put a capital project work group together that's actually doing all this work, and then we are presenting this information. I think what's happening, and this is something I would caution against, which has happened ever since I've been here, is that we're very quick to delete items because we're worried about tax impact. And I think it's important, this is discussion, so you haven't approved it yet, but if you do approve it, what I'm hearing at some of the meetings from some folks that are a little critical, and I've heard it even tonight from board and people, is that, well, we don't like this outside of the budget. Well, but that's what the Board of Finance told us to do. So we're doing what we were told to do. So if we didn't like it outside of the budget, then we need to approve it inside the budget, because it's their needs. I mean, and I think that's what we have to think about as we kind of move forward. We're putting the work into be planful, but we have to be steadfast in that plan. And we do have pictures like that. And we probably have those in those discussions for all of the items that we're putting forward that are, vehicle replacement type things.
Yeah, I think that we still have a process of that is away from discretion. In other words, we are vetting it again as the Board of Finance. Would be taken to a town meeting, be vetted once again for final approval. So we have a process to, okay, let everybody know that this is something that has a level of criticality and serves the residents at large.
Thanks.
Any other? Okay, if I can bring it to a vote. All in favor of this appropriation for $53,000 for truck purchase to be added to the highway department fleet? If you can indicate by saying aye.
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 We're unanimous on it, 5-0-0. Donnie, thanks for being here tonight, and pictures are worth 1,000 words. And when winter does come, everybody expects that their parking lot or the driveway, not the driveways, but roads will be plowed. So, and you've done a great job up to this point. Is that all from the Board of Selectmen contingency? Yes. Thank you. All right, that brings us to agenda item number 5. You did get the reports. Do take a look at them as you are able. I know you probably only had them in hand a couple of days at best. Relative to the tax report, because it's not in the old format, we'll move to that hopefully. But Christine, maybe you can just address and give us a sense of where we're at as opposed to just looking at the numbers percentage wise.
Yep. So I did provide you with both the report from the end of September this year and the report for the end of September last year so that you could compare the two. And as I open them on my screen, last year at the end of September, we had collected $8,287,741.95. And the end of this September, we have collected $8,770,719.26. So we are further along this year than we were last year at this time.
Okay, and as a percentage, do you have a percentage?
I do not.
Okay,
The other report I gave you all was through the end of August, not September.
Yeah. Any questions relative to that report? All right. Agenda item number 6. This is one policy we've been on the hunt for, budget reconciliation. I think, at least based on our last meeting, we were given a draft. I don't know if members have that tonight.
Dan, the draft you have is the draft we reviewed in the last meeting. In the last meeting, I did get more feedback, and there's one last thing I'm chasing, which is the articulating how we calculate the tax rate.
Yeah.
So it's not done yet. So I'll have to send it out once I'm able to finish that.
Right. So would it be fair to say that this is something we can put on the agenda for our next meeting in October?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Previous minutes. I know that Ann was at our last meeting, but I didn't see that a draft was posted. So I'm gonna call her. I didn't get an answer today to see if she's got those. Otherwise, I have notes and I'll reconstruct those minutes. Minutes that we were missing went back to April 28th. Is that correct? Check that. Yeah, and I reconstructed those minutes. And we'll post a draft tomorrow, so we'll have that approval. That was the only one we had missing up to the last meeting. So That's all I have to report there. Under future strategies, agenda item number 8, were there any reports from Board of Finance members to be? Okay. The closeout for the last fiscal year, I'll let Christine give you a quick brief up on that. I've been calling in regular just to see where we're at. So she and I have had a running dialogue. Christine?
So we are in the midst of the audit. We officially started on September 27th. We are on week 2 of what we anticipate to be a 3-week process. The final audit is the draft audit is anticipated to be done October 29th, I think is the date that the auditor has estimated to be done. Things are going well. She's working very closely with Deb Martin, the business manager for the school, and Susan Pike, the accounting generalist for the town side. We haven't come across any issues. Things are a little bit more complicated with all of the federal funding that we're receiving because of COVID-19 on both the school and the town side. So those processes are taking a little bit longer for the single state and the federal audit. So, but things are moving in a positive fashion.
All right, thank you. So I will talk to the auditor, see if we can get a date relative to her presentation to us, whether or not that will be in person or Zoom. And what she will present is the draft of the audit for the last fiscal year, which we then have the authority to approve so that it can move to final form. And also do know that this is something that has to happen and be filed by the state by year's end. So the other that I put on there was the RFP for auditing services. So again, Christine, I'll come back to you.
So as you may know, the financial software was approved last night at the town meeting. So we would request that we put off the RFP for auditing services for another year so that we work with our current auditor to set up the software. We feel that having someone who understands the accounts of the town still working with us as we go through that process will be highly beneficial. She's familiar with the software and familiar with us. So we think that that would be in the town's best interest overall. And then we would have the RFP ready to go out for next year.
Okay, with that being said, I probably would request of her a proposal for the next fiscal year. Also know that that has to be approved and put forward to the state in January. And does everybody agree that from the Board of Finance that makes sense to keep the auditing services on, as long as there's no aberration in pricing? Yes, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
I know that she had on last year's, I think this year's, she had additional money added to her overall cost. Is that correct, Christine? Based upon certain COVID issues?
For the last audit, she had an additional request. For the current audit, there was an increase because we knew there was going to be additional work and we did budget for that for the audit that we're paying for in this fiscal year.
Okay. And how much was that?
I would have to look it up in the office tomorrow. I don't have that off the top of my head. We split the audit between the Board of Ed and the town, so I can tell you how much the town side went up, but not the overall.
I think it had a lid, and again, I'm just calling for recollection of like $8,000. And
Something, it was either 6 or 8, I thought.
for the COVID piece, but because of the cooperation that they got from our
Deb.
staff,
Yeah.
it was driven down, so it was less than that.
The increase in the budget is $2,500 for this fiscal year on the town side. As I said, I I know our piece went up more than the Board of Ed piece, so my guess is either $3,000 or 2,500 total. But that's a guess.
All right, and do you feel like the process so far is going to yield, a similar results last year where that she was able to do it for less than she anticipated because of the help that she's gotten?
No, because we have to file the federal audit because of the amount of grants that we've gotten, it will be the additional cost.
Okay.
All right, Dan, I'll take you first, then Brett.
Are we anticipating if we go with her for one more year before we send out an RFP, are we anticipating like another surcharge for using this new software because she's familiar with that software? Are we anticipating, all right, we're no longer using QuickBooks. Well, now it's this new software. It's going to cost this much more because she's going to be using that one.
I don't anticipate that. On their end, it's just the format that we send them the reports in. So I don't see that would have an extra charge, but we can make sure that we make it clear to her that we are implementing the software and make sure she takes that into consideration when she puts together her proposal.
I just don't want this to turn into, oh, well, it's going to cost $3,000 more because you're using this software now. You were doing, this is what the rate was when we were using QuickBooks. Now it's going to be this because of this. I think before we commit to that, I think that needs to be kind of vetted out.
The Board of Ed is
prior.
already using the new software, so I don't
But that increase
foresee
could,
that.
but that increase could already been entailed into their cost already. And then they're not anticipating doing it across the board. You know what I mean? Dan, I think you understand where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I do. What I would do is even on the morrow, if I can get in touch with her, I will have a conversation, which would be informal, not a proposal, but get a sounding on that and bring it forward at our next meeting.
Thanks.
Brett?
I was actually thinking the opposite with the new software after this. If it does all the wonderful things that they say it does, that it should be easier for the audit process, less time consuming. And especially, I know we have more forms because of COVID, but she's also not traveling here anymore. It's all through meetings online, things like that. So there was time savings there. So I'm hesitant just to say, yes, go another year without anything, because that's what we did last year. We said, okay, because of the time crunch, we said, let's finish this out. We'll put it to RFP and we'll see what happens, and we'll put it out there and make sure everything's going well. And now we're in the same boat that we're saying, okay, let's give it one more year. But the cost keeps going up with the current auditor for something.
We're doing more legwork.
No, we're not.
So that us doing it over Zoom with the town and you guys running all these reports and everything is the same.
Your mic's
amount of
off.
effort. It is the same amount of effort than if they were both sitting there.
It's
Apples-
for
apples-
our staff, it is actually easier on the town side. I can't speak for the Board of Ed. I don't know their experience. For us, it is easier for them to be remote because we can continue to do our normal day-to-day without having to run back and forth to the conference room when they have a question. So Susan is able to get more of her normal work done as the process is happening. And she just had to scan some things, and we already scan a lot of our files. So it was a matter of transferring them from one site to their site rather than putting them in a box. So
Okay.
it's a different kind of work, but on our end, as it's happening, it's actually easier.
And it's easier for them also.
I just know a few of the other towns, when they did put it out to bid, that was using our current auditor, the prices did come in a decent amount lower. And that was last year. So I don't know what this year looks like, but I just don't want to keep, we always say kicking the can down the road, but now we're just kicking the contract down the road saying, yes, we're comfortable. Let's stay comfortable, but our prices keep going up.
Yeah, again, I'll get a sounding, hopefully as early as this week, but also that we would request a proposal so that we'll know where the pricing is and determine whether or not it's the right thing for us.
I am very hesitant to set up a software with a new auditor who doesn't know the town. I'm just putting that on the record.
Well noted. Right, the last that I put under future strategies was just a quick review of the non-lapsing memorandum of agreement with Board of Ed. Through our last couple of meetings, there just seemed to be some question as to the content. So I had that resent to you just so that you understand what this entails. It is something that has been vetted by our legal and agreed to both by Board of Ed and Board of Finance. And I have present Christine Wagner, who, again, from her side, could give you just a little brief up as to the relevance of this account and how it plays relative to their planning and execution of budget. Christine, do you want to say a few words? She's still on.
Yep, I can, hold on. I can say a couple things. It kind of ties into year end, and I don't know, you had on the agenda the Board of Ed gain loss. Did I miss that part? I didn't hear you guys go over that report or which one that was. So I'll just talk to the non-lapsing, and then in public comment, I'll address the other. So the reason that we pushed for this a year ago and really felt strongly about it, just as other districts are using it, is that we were finding at the year end, if we had a year where we had some savings or some expenses saved that we weren't anticipating, that we were having to make really quick, fast, last minute decisions on making purchases to fulfill things that had already been cut out of our budget prior. They weren't frivolous things, they weren't things that weren't needed, but we had not had, moving forward, we were usually getting 0 to 1% budget increases year after year after year. So we had cut so many things year after year. And then we were finding at the last minute, we were having to try to fill those holes. So what this has allowed us to do is do some really smart fiscal planning moving forward. It's allowed us to take a look at our budget when we come forward and say, let's not put in the one-time expense, but let's see if we can't fulfill those things with the non-lapsing account now that we have something there that will help us with those unanticipated expenses. You will see this year the amount, I don't know, did you already go through in detail the fiscal year-end education budget at one of your prior meetings?
We did not review this particular account in terms of expenditures.
No, the year-end, the fiscal year-end, because that's where the money comes from that goes into it. Have you reviewed our fiscal year-end yet?
No. Right.
Okay, when are you planning on doing that? I just think it's it's the huge nut that goes into the non-lapsing account. That's why I was asking when that was on the agenda to be reviewed. Or is it not yet?
Well, we only have a draft of.
Right. Okay. So anyway, I'll just dive into it. So if you look at the,
Yep.
As of August 30th, you received the draft of the fiscal year end June 30th. Obviously it's a draft, but very, very close to where we are anticipating.
Yes.
Because of COVID, we had a savings in our budget of $259,000. That is an anomaly. That is not something that is going to occur every year. Even we had well over $600,000 in expenses that we were able to use a lot of grant funding for COVID with that were COVID related expenses. The bulk of where that came from, if you've dug through that spreadsheet and that financial statement, came from transportation, because for much of that year, we were not in school. or were in school hybrid. We still had a contract on transportation. So we had to fulfill that contract. We worked with the bus company to come up with a percentage of how much of that contract we were going to pay. And the difference was that savings. So with that savings, that's the amount that you're seeing put into that non-lapsing account. Now, we don't anticipate that going in each year, but that's kind of what happened this year. We don't anticipate anything near that going in each year. But where we're at with that is we also zeroed out, again, our technology line in our budget last year. And if you recall, when we went through the budget, there were about $85,000 to $90,000 in allocations that we were going to use the non-lapsing account for things that we weren't able to get in our budget. And remember, we had 3 pots of 3 areas that we felt we were able to save from to keep our budget low. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking at using the non-lapsing account for. We also zeroed out all of our supply lines last year that normally is in an education budget. We obviously need supplies to run our school. So that's what we were looking to use the non-lapsing account for. We feel it's a really smart way to take approved budget, approved money that was approved by the town for education, and continue to use it for education, but to do it with a thought process and without being rushed to make decisions at the year end. So one thing that the board would like me to do, and I was kind of on this meeting because I thought this is what you guys were going to go through tonight with the Board of Ed gain loss. I would like to be part of presenting our monthly financials to you guys so that when we get to budget season, the questions aren't coming from things that could have been looked at in August and September and October. So if you can just let me know kind of which meeting each month you go through our financials, I would love to be part of that and answer any questions you guys have, go through any of that with you. We are also providing a spreadsheet of any expenditures that we take out of the non-lapsing account to you monthly so that you can see what things we are purchasing and what we would be doing with that.
All right, fine. Are there any questions from the Board of Finance to the Chair of the Board of Education relative to the non-lapsing account? Sarah?
Hi, Christine. Thanks for coming tonight.
Sure.
Well, I don't know if you got a chance to listen, and I wouldn't have expected you to the conversation we had last month on this. I think what the Board of Finance is primarily looking to understand is similar to how we have a policy within the for our undesignated fund that it won't ever exceed a certain amount because we don't want to be taxing taxpayers and then not using the money towards the taxpayers. We weren't sure, or we didn't really understand if there was any sort of ceiling on the non-lapsing account to make sure that it didn't get criticism from taxpayers that, you know, we're just piling up money over here in this other bucket. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, if you look at history in years past, and if you've looked at our most recent financial as of August 30th, we aren't trending towards a $259,000 move into that account. Normally, we're struggling just to get it to come out pretty much even at year end. So I don't anticipate us moving year after year a bunch of money into there. I just think that if there's $30,000 or $40,000 left, instead of saying, quick, what do we need to fill with? We can say, okay, what things weren't we able to get budgeted and what can we do with that the following year? So I don't anticipate that growing. You know, we aren't passing 4%, 5%, 6% budget increases each year. You guys know exactly what's in that budget. You know, it's almost all staff heavy. There isn't surplus. This is not we have a surplus situation. We have so many line items, again, like we talked about last year, that have been zeroed out that we need to bring back to whole, that I can't imagine we're going to be in a significant surplus situation down the road. I just don't see it. There are some districts that have millions of dollars in their undesignated funds, which can be very helpful when you have equipment failure, capital expenses come up, things like that, that you just don't want to put in a budget, but that you need to do to take care of your school. I can't imagine, looking at where we're at with our budgets the way they are now, I don't see that happening for us, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And I do appreciate I agree that you don't want to be rushing. I never understood those sort of arbitrary deadlines to spend all your budget, because I do think it leads to rash decision making and regret later. So I appreciate that. So thank you. So, I don't have any other questions.
Mike, did you have a question, Mike Anderson?
Not necessarily a question. I think, I mean, the way our memorandum of decision between the two of us reads right now, any money that's left over from the Board of Education budget goes into the RISA account up to the 2%. And obviously, to Sarah's point just made and Christine's point, we have the purpose is to be able to use those funds at discretion after budget season for in the next fiscal year, when you're going to be able to make better decisions. I think there's also a provision in there that, the Board of Education is to provide, monthly reports as to what's in the RISA account. And Christine just said that they have a spreadsheet saying what expenditures are coming out of there. I think that these boards work very well together. I don't think there's any real chance of this account growing to some exponential amount, because there is our oversight, and we would have to say, okay, you want this in your budget, but you have all this money over here. Here's a one-time expenditure that you have in your budget. Why don't you use the RISA account for that? We have oversight over that to say, that's not going to be in the budget because you're able to pay for it over here. I don't see it being a huge slush fund. I don't think the town's going to allow that to happen. I don't think this board will allow that to happen. It is a good thing to have. So those monies aren't used at the end of the year, without the best overall thinking about what should be purchased and when. So there are procedures in the memorandum that gives us oversight, and I think working together will be fine with it. But any money that they have left over is supposed to go into that account according to what I just read.
And I think one more thing is, it's very new. I mean, we just started this. I think we're not even fully in our second year with it. So I would like some time to see how it works out a little bit, especially after this crazy COVID year, things that just weren't anticipated before I hate to see us start making changes before we've even started seeing how it works out.
I think, Dan, if I may, just on Christine's point earlier, maybe once a month, we do have her talk, come in and go over her profit and loss, and then the report from the RISA fund. And so it's an actual on the agenda item, and she's here and she discusses it. I think we'd all be, better off hearing that over the course of the year. And that way we're all on the same page as to what's in there and how the budget's going, as the year progresses.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And Christine and I've had the discussion. She said she would be more than happy if she were to continue in her role to be at the Board of Finance meetings. In the past, we have tried a liaison from the Board of Finance to sit at the Board of Ed meetings. But tonight also could be an example that sometimes it's tight in just getting a quorum to do business for Board of Finance. And then, an added requirement for a board member to be at one other meeting. But I think we can keep the dialogue robust and have Christine or one of her representatives join our meeting as they are able. We also wanted to look at this memorandum of agreement on the non-lapsing. just because boards are going to be changing, at least in terms of content. People are moving on. And we want to be sure that the relevance of what we've done here as a new action is understood. And as Christine points out, as we move into the future, see how it is working. And because we have responsibility of oversight, that any one of us can explain what is going on and how this benefits the district to a taxpayer. So, Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan, and I agree with everything that Christine said, and I appreciate her going through it. I love the idea of her coming. I actually think ideally it might be really nice to just have a P&L reports night once a month, and we have maybe Christine take us through the highlights in the municipal, and then Christine take us through the highlights on the Board of Ed. I think that would be a nice consistent thing to do. I do think I agree with everything Mike said. I personally don't think we need any sort of change right now. However, I do think it's worth a discussion. I think the original concern that was brought up was around how do we protect the RISA account, make sure that it isn't open to any sort of criticism from the town. We haven't heard any, we haven't gotten any, so it could be, a little preemptive, and we don't have to worry about it right now, and we can let it play out like Mike suggested. But I do think we should consciously make that decision or not, so that we all agree, because with the boards changing and things moving, I would hate to be in a situation where we are getting complaints later, or not. So just something I think we should just actively have that conversation and say whether we think we're comfortable with the memorandum as it is now, with no ceiling, with no sort of not addressing that, or, based on what Mike said, which is, excuse me, which is the fact that we still have control over the budget. So if we see a really large non-lapsing account and we see, large budget increase, we have that negotiation discussion. I'm good with that. I just want to make sure all the rest of the board is as well. Excuse me.
Yes, Brett.
I'm done.
I'm sorry. Sarah, are you done? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I do agree with Mike and Sarah. And I was a big proponent of the non-lapsing count even before I was on the board. I do think that addressing some of those concerns ahead of time are great, and maybe opening that dialogue with the Board of Ed and Christine to maybe put some more details in that memorandum in the future. I looked at a lot of other towns, and some are much more detailed. Some are right near where we are. But what we have to be careful of is when people use the word slush fund and some of these connotations that make it sound negative, instead of that we're using this money for education. It's money that was voted on by the town to be used for education. And if the board was able to save money or plan differently for things, then we're that much more efficient, especially it cuts back on that end of year spending. And if you start looking or just Google the words Connecticut Board of Education non-lapsing, you'll see that COVID made a lot of towns now look at establishing these policies that didn't have them before, because of the extra funds that they have in there and the unknown expenses in the next few years. So I think we're a little ahead of the curve on some by getting this done, but I think having some more detail in there wouldn't be a bad thing. And if that's working with Christine and the Board of Ed to come up with something that's mutually agreeable to just set up those expectations for the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and also the Board of Ed not to know that, on a whim, a new Board of Finance comes in and says, let's give the Board of Ed 60 days notice. We're going to pull this account. I think it's got to be a mutual understanding of what's expected. And as Board of Finance, that we can't just pull the plug quickly because we feel like it. I think everyone has to be comfortable and we have to be able to discuss these things as we move forward. But to Sarah's point, if we do this ahead of time, I think it's just beneficial because we don't want the public that doesn't understand the process to think this is something different than it is. Thanks.
Dan Smith.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that Sarah, Mike, and Brett has said. I think there should be probably some words in there talking about before, like this account could be pulled. It would have to be for just not on a whim or for cause. There would have to be an actual cause for them to pull this, for the Board of Finance to pull this account. And also like a mediation or a probationary time of frame where the Board of Ed could, if there was issues, they could go back and fix those issues and then go from there. I don't think the Board of Finance should be able to go out and just say on a whim, you know what, new board, we can just pull it. I think between the two boards, there has to be some dialogue and a cause of why we would want to pull that account. I've been a proponent for this account from the very beginning. I think it's a great idea. I agree with Christine that COVID has thrown a curveball on the whole thing. And I think going forward, I think we have to let it roll out a little bit further and give them the chance to actually manage it the way that they need to manage it.
All right, so noted. Any other questions or comments for Christine Wagner? All right. Christine, we certainly appreciate your participation and that you had to wait to get a little bit further down on the agenda tonight. So thank you very much.
That's okay. No problem. Thanks for letting me speak. I appreciate it. And thanks, Dan. I really like that train of thought as well. So.
All right. That would bring us to public comments once again. And if there are any, we're happy to hear them at this point. Any from online? All right, we're entertaining a motion to adjourn brought forward by Brett.
Second.
Dan Smith is the second. I would call adjournment at 8:23. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yes. Does somebody call? Okay.
Just saying thanks.
All right, thank you. That's it.